Welcome to Mortgage on My Mind, where we take the mystery out of mortgages and make dreams of home ownership a reality. I'm Natalie Salins, a top 1% mortgage broker with 20 years of experience, based right here in sunny Los Angeles. If you've ever wondered about pre-approvals, appraisals, or what loan product is right for you, don't worry, I've got Mortgage on My Mind, so you don't have to. Each week, I'll bring you expert advice, real-life stories, and insider tips to help you navigate California's competitive real estate market with confidence. Whether you're buying your first home, refinancing, or just curious about how it all works, this podcast is for you. So let's talk mortgages, demystify the process, and make your real estate goals a reality. Ready to get started? Let's dive in. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mortgage on My Mind. Today, we have a super knowledgeable agent, Jordan Miller. He is a nationally recognized real estate broker. He's founder of the Miller team, and he is a top producing group out of Portland and the Oregon coast. He is in the National Association of Realtors, 30 under 30 honoree. And he's also a Harvard-trained negotiator, which I find super interesting. So, of course, he brings great strategy and market depth and client focus to everything that he does. With hundreds of successful transactions under his belt, Jordan is known for helping clients and fellow agents understand the real estate landscape with clarity and purpose. Welcome, Jordan.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, such a pleasure. So tell me a little bit about, I don't want to sound cliche or anything, but about your Harvard education and what that was and what that means and how that you think influences how well of an agent you do.
Yeah, so really that came from after getting the top 30 under 30 in the US through the NAR. My wife and I took a trip to Boston and we were walking around the campuses and I got a wild hair of going, I wonder if there's any classes about real estate. And I was trying to find, I love real estate history. So I was trying to look through the Harvard library and see if they had any books about real estate or anything in the industry. And if you go there, the section is about that big and there wasn't much there. So I started looking at classes at Harvard, and there was actually a negotiation class it was in person. It was multiple weeks long, which was very interesting and intriguing. And there was about 60 people that were going to be in the class, but you had to go through and fill out a questionnaire, obviously, pay for the class, of course. They're going to have you pay for it, and write an essay. And they actually do a phone call. They screen you. You have to sign NDAs. And just seeing that negotiation class on there and going, why not give it a shot? And I did, and I ended up getting accepted into it. And it got me into around a group of people that I come from a small town. I never thought that I would be around. It was an eye-opening experience. And I would say that's really the one class I ever took in real estate that I can say confidently I use it every day for real estate, but also anything else I do throughout my life. So it was really impactful.
Interesting.
Yeah.
How amazing. And it was, so it was just a course, like a one course through.
Exactly. So there's definitely prerequisites that they want. They don't have to necessarily be through the Harvard program, but there is definitely a threshold of experience that they want attendees to be at. And also given I signed the NDA, so I can't get into too much, but I mean, from oil executives, fire chiefs of cities that have populations over 10 million, let's say, it was a really interesting group and it was very interactive as well on exercises. And it was specifically with multi-party negotiation and how that differs based on the parties and the interest and managing those relationships and strategies across any negotiation relationship. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing and makes me feel very interested in taking that class as well.
And it wasn't just for real estate. It was for negotiating corporations as well. So it was really interesting to have a class that was not just that real estate course and training course we always go to. It was, hey, we have to negotiate a port deal for a shipping company, and there's 6 different parties from Greenpeace to the port master to the shipping company, and it was just eye-opening on really every aspect of it.
Yeah, that's amazing. So cool. It really actually has me like thinking, because I love that
kind of thing.
And I will say now, if you look it up on Harvard, they only offer some of those classes online now. And I would encourage anybody listening, yourself, go in person. It's worth the experience. There's breakfast, you do dinners together. It's very happy hours at night. It was, yeah.
How many weeks is it?
That one, it was about a week and a half. I ended up staying about
Oh,
2.5 weeks just because one, I wanted to get there and be ready for the course, but also there were a few, I actually ended up extending my stay a couple days because there was some cool people that were hanging around that I wanted to continue to talk with.
amazing. That's doable, actually. How
It
cool.
completely.
How
Yeah.
cool. So before we started recording, we were chatting about something that I think our audience will find so interesting. And I am looking forward to hearing this from you. But you said that you read a book, like one of the most important books you read on real estate about the history of real estate. And it's a
Yes.
textbook. So what is that called?
So it is part of my book stack that is having my laptop at the appropriate height. I
Hey.
will pull it out, and now I got a little bit shorter or taller, but it's built up, and it's by Patrice Darrington. And I carry this with me everywhere. And I was, let's say, a realtor. I was a C student. I was not a textbook person. I was not the rock star in the books. But if I would have had notes like this, in
Oh,
anything I ever did in school, they would have been a lot happier with me. But no, it just captured my attention. I basically took the strategy of, frankly, I read 2 pages a day. I make notes on each of the pages, and I am putting together some different classes in regard to actually teaching the history of real estate. Because if you go on YouTube and history of real estate, it starts always in the 50s, 60s, 70s. That's when it started getting tracked more, but this goes back all the way to 400 BC.
okay. So let's start there. Tell
Okay.
us the basics of how real estate started and what does that mean?
Yeah. So the,
Going
the
back to
really good
400 BC, like how's that possible?
Yeah. So the really good news is that the problems that we have today, we've been having those problems for 2000 plus years, and those debates and conversations on what does that actually mean? What are people and property rights are different than in today's lingo, I'll say human rights. Human rights were not always really much of a conversation back in
Mhm.
the year 1000. Much
Right.
different perspective. So the origin of this conversation that we experience today around real estate started between a debate that happened between Plato and Aristotle. And there was two different theories. One essentially was tenant in common, and the other party believed in personal property rights. And the debate that was happening was that, well, in one case could be made from two of the greatest minds that were out there in philosophy.
Sure.
One case could be made that there shouldn't be individual property ownership because a community should be sharing things, and that would be your tenancy in common. And we'll hear that word used today, those words we hear
Sure.
that. And that was one side of the argument. The other side was that imagine that you're a king or a queen back in the day and a ruler, and you go, I have this massive city and I need to take care of it, and I want the people to take care of it. In today's verbiage, there's a phrase we'll say, or a saying you could say on, hey, nobody ever washed a rental car. And there was a belief that ownership led to
Mm.
people
Right.
being involved in their community, and they're going to take pride in ownership and basically be able to actually care for the properties better and have more opportunity. And that was the side that ended up winning. So that's where really we have our real estate structure that we see a lot today, but there was a different split when America got founded, and we switched from the continental system, which is European, to the common law system, which is the US. And obviously countries have intermingled, but that is the foundation of where that comes from. And that's why really our system here in the States is really unique compared to other countries throughout history. And also it helps with wealth distribution and wealth dilution. It also creates problems that we face. And
What's the difference? What's continental law as opposed to common law?
yes, so continental law, essentially your property ownership is going to transfer to your firstborn that carries the family name. I also believe, and it,
Regardless, like there's no such thing as
regardless.
taking title.
Correct. Yes. And
Got it.
recording title and deed. Oh, you're going to get me on a good rant here. Recording title and deed was a really complicated thing back when you had to walk everywhere. So, if you're William the Conqueror was actually the main person that started all of this, and that was in 1066. He was expanding his empire and basically goes, okay, I have troops over in France. I need to be able to figure out a way to provide them with land or pay them because they ran out of money. And so they would actually distribute land to the troops. And if they could take care of the land and have crops off of it, and of course pay taxes, then they could manage that. But that was a big difference in the split of actually having property rights. And what's very interesting is human rights stemmed from property rights because on your property, that's where you're growing your food. You were supposed to, on the ethical side, growing as much food as you can to take care of your family. And then any excess would be given to your brother, which is then that would be your neighbor. That would be
Oh,
those
okay.
around you.
Interesting.
And yeah, so that was really the ethical reasoning for that. And I also think that's where some pain is experienced even today with condos, townhomes, the housing that we're really packing in tight. Because yes, it is great for the builders. It could be more affordable for those buying them. But when you're occupying that home, you might not have the same feeling or opportunity to share any benefit with your neighbor because you have a townhome. You can't let their kids come over and play in your yard. You can't set up a sprinkler for the whole street. It creates some problems that I don't necessarily know are at the surface that everybody realizes. Interesting. But I think I danced around the original question a little bit on
No problem.
continental law and common law.
Content.
The
Right.
common law was your properties equally distributed across the heirs. Whereas continental law is that it just goes to the firstborn and the firstborn with the name. And that is where we started the trend of the firstborn son, and men always get the properties. If there wasn't a male heir, it actually went to the firstborn as long as they continued to carry the name. So that's where we started to get into some weird interfamily marriages, and it caused some
But
interesting.
what if you don't have children?
Yeah, it caused some interesting things back then. But we also had a lot more consolidation of wealth under that continental system because it would just pass through the family. Whereas with the common law system, at least from my real estate experience, if you have three siblings trying to make one decision, the odds of them all having the exact same idea of what to do is very low.
Right.
The purpose of that was, yeah, you pass it to the heirs. One's going to stay on the farm forever. One's going to carve off their parcel and sell it in 3 years. And the other one's going to never even visit again and they'll sell it to somebody else. So that's why it dilutes so much more rapid here than it does necessarily in Europe.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting. It's what it is if you don't have any heirs, right? If and are single. If you don't have any heirs and are single and haven't written a will, it just goes to your family.
Yeah, and back then that was the property rights of if someone passed away, they didn't have any heirs, they didn't transfer ownership. If you decided to move your farm over and you farmed it successfully for, I believe it was 2 years, then that was your property.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. And same thing with the military explorations. If you went and fought a battle somewhere and took your family with you and you said, hey, we like it here, we'll stay here, we're going to improve the property, put up fences, which is a whole nother tangent. Then as long as you maintain it for 2 years and pay taxes to the king, then you can just have that property.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I know as far as when obviously getting loans and financing and mortgages are so different in different countries. I have some clients that are like, so if I get this loan and I pay it off, I'm going to have to owe all the interest on it. And I'm like, what? And certain countries, I'm like, no, you pay what the balance is. You pay only what you owe still.
Yeah.
Some countries, if you have a mortgage that has a balance of 600,000, regardless of that balance, the lender expects you to pay off the interest that they gave you the loan on through the term.
Wow. That's
It's
amazing.
incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, you're like, what? And then there are some, so that's obviously that harnesses the ability to sell and buy new. You're not going to sell and buy something new if you have to pay off as if you lived there for 30 years. You're just going to live there for 30 years. There's
Yep.
no incentive to sell and buy new. But then there are countries that like Canada that if you have a job and a bank account, they have to give you a mortgage. They basically just give you one. And that's because homeownership there is so important and they want everybody to own. If they have a good job and they have a bank account, that
Wow.
bank that they have the account with gives them a mortgage. Kind of that simple.
That's really interesting. And the
Yeah.
mortgages were referenced in the book. It didn't go as in depth, and I haven't got on that tangent yet. But it is very interesting on mortgages started a lot earlier than I necessarily thought. And it was different forms of a percentage of crop to actual currency. Because if you think back to year 300, let's say, there
Yeah.
wasn't a consistent currency. And recording a title, though they don't want to record a title over and over again with different names every time you sell something. So that's why it would stick in the same name as having to record a title back then. You actually had to appear in front of the king.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And then the king goes, I'm seeing too many people. Let's come up with something called landlords. We're
Right.
usually retired military, which was interesting.
Wow. So cool. So interesting. Funny how you don't think about the history of it. You just think about purchasing for home ownership and equity, and you don't really think about the fact that they had home ownership in 400 BC. You said it goes back that early.
So that was when the concept was originally debated on should people even have ownership of property ever. So that's when that conversation started. And then the real ownership didn't kick in until that William the Conqueror in 1066. That's when more documented ownership. Everything before that, everything was so dispersed. Your main cities were still 40 to 60,000 people. It wasn't millions of people. So you have to go back and put yourself in that time and think about what life was actually like and the problems you'd have.
So you also mentioned wealth transfer or wealth dilution. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? I've heard the phrase wealth dilution before, but what exactly do you mean in detail?
Yeah, so that's on the historical side of things. That's how our system was built up. It was not to, I used a pun for the book there, but
Oh,
that is
yeah.
how our system was built up. In that the fact that instead of that property just transferring to one heir, it was distributed amongst the siblings. And we had enough faith that siblings wouldn't be able to get along enough to be able to consolidate wealth over an extended period of time and all stay on the same page. And so that is how basically our entire system that we use today with the common law structure was set up to be able to not just have that consolidation of wealth over time, which is what we see in Europe. Here, that's also where we find that families that really stick together, and I think in a modern time, we're seeing that as well when it comes to affordability on being able to purchase property. We're seeing more kids and parents and grandparents go in together, whether or not they're on the mortgage or not, but still being able to help out with payments, use retirement, and be able to get nicer properties. If you can stand living with your kids and grandparents, you probably could buy a $2-3 million house being a normal family because you're consolidating the ability to make payments and so on. We have a lot more wealth dilution here, even though it may not seem like it in the short term. Over the long term, even if we look at what family was Anderson Cooper? Vanderbilt's. That entire fortune has basically eroded over the period of 120 years.
I know.
And through an immense amount of siblings, and some of the families are still going strong, but just if that family was in Europe, that probably wouldn't have been the case.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so what would you say, is it generational shift in real estate? Is it an opportunity? We have this question, or is it a trap?
I think it can be both. And I think that the thing that people should be cautious of, really pay attention to, is when you're starting to think about real estate or what real estate is going to look like in your life, whether you're a construction worker or a doctor or whatever the profession. I think thinking in the right timeline is very important and coming up with a plan. Most of my clients, they're amazing, but just most people I encounter, and me before I got into real estate, I wasn't thinking about my real estate portfolio 10 years down the road.
Right.
I'm thinking of it 3 months in advance, maybe 6 months if I'm really a planner. But that limits the options. And I'm sure on the mortgage side, if you would have came to me a year ago, I could have helped fix your credit. I could have helped you on the income side on what you needed to report. It would have been so much easier. So my advice to people is really try to think on a longer time scale. And if you're just starting, then yeah, think about a 1, 3, 5, 10-year plan max. Then the 10-year can just be what the dream is. It doesn't have to actually be accurate completely, but having a plan makes a huge difference. If you're someone that's inheriting properties or a lot of wealth, you're like, hey, grandma and grandpa saved up all their money from picking berries and now they have a house and it's $2 million. All right, let's sell that. And because grandpa was big into real estate, let's go buy a bunch of rental properties. That could be good, but you're also taking an unnecessary amount of risk based on the amount of safety net that you have. So I think people should really evaluate that. And if you want a fun exercise, think about, well, what if I said you were going to live 200 years? How much risk would you have to take to feel like you
Right.
were getting ahead? If you extend the time frame, I don't have to take as much risk. So if someone is inheriting properties, most likely the person that was able to buy those in the beginning took a risk somewhere, whether it was starting a business or whatever that is. And if they want to
Sure.
follow in the footsteps, just be aware of the safety net. Don't over leverage. That's the big thing that I see people do on trying to grow too fast is they end up taking on more debt than they're comfortable with, which then makes it harder for them to even think or perform in their daily life because they're stressed out about these payments. And then that impacts income and job performance. And then it starts to just seep into all different areas.
Right.
Yep.
And it's funny, speaking of from a guy that you had mentioned earlier, you have 8 properties.
Yes. Yep.
So I'm guessing is your primary, and then you have 7 investment properties.
Correct. Yep.
And
Yep.
how did you decide that those weren't risky and were good investments, that you weren't taking on too much, that you wouldn't feel stressed over with managing your normal? Because 7 is quite a bit.
Yeah. And so the first thing would be having a good partner. So I would say that if someone has a spouse, you definitely need to make sure that you're on the same page. Because we were in our early 20s when we bought our first property, our first house that we moved into, first married, the whole fun nesting thing. Then we bought that, and it was $1,400 a month. Felt like a massive payment because the apartment we were renting was $1,100. Oh my gosh, this is like a 30% increase in monthly payment.
Funny.
But we jumped and we did it. And then we stayed there for a couple of years until my career really started taking off. And then we decided to buy a bigger house that felt like it was a really good deal. It was in a golf course neighborhood. At that time, it was $500,000, which felt like a huge amount of money. And again, this is 2015.
Yeah.
So that was big. But that house ended up going up in value. And one day we realized, or I guess I realized, that we don't really use a ton of this house. We just bought it because it was a good deal and it felt right at that time to do it. We didn't sell our first home. We turned that into a rental property. So we actually never have sold a property of
Smart.
our own.
Yeah.
But we were able to buy that second house as a primary residence, which got us the 5% down. Totally made sense. And then that home ended up going up in value by about $80,000. And at that time, we'd saved up an additional probably 20 or 30,000. And so we decided, hey, let's sell this for about 580. And then we're going to go buy we actually moved to my parents' basement for 6 months, which God bless
Good.
my wife. But we did that. And then we bought two more rental properties from the money that we made on that house. So I lied. We did sell one home. So now we had 3 rental properties.
Right.
Then we were able to just continue from there and wait for another deal. Then we picked up another one, moved out of the parents' basement. But I think early in life and before having kids, all of that stuff that happens, wonderful things. But I would advise people, if they are thinking of buying or having a rental portfolio, try to at least get 2 or 3 of those as primary residences. And yes, it does mean that you are moving into a house that is just not, it doesn't have 20-foot ceilings and chandeliers and all the magnificence that your home will eventually have if you follow the plan. But
Right.
moving into similar homes multiple times every 2 years or so, that was a really great way that we were able to get ahead and at a relatively low cost, being able to go 5% down each time.
Exactly. Yeah, I have a few people that I've gotten in and out of FHAs actually.
Mm.
So putting 3.5% down on duplexes, few different times over, built such an incredible rental portfolio for them.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. And I will say that the one area where my perspective is skewed continually, and I still haven't adjusted, is that when our payment was 1,400, I felt like it was just as big and just as much pressure of going, oh my gosh, as I have when our mortgage payment was 2,600, when our mortgage payment was 3,500. And that's something that just it never ceases. At some point, I feel like we should feel, wow, I finally have a reasonable mortgage. It's the right spot. It always feels like it's a little bit uncomfortable.
Totally.
That's
But
where it
it's
helps to have a
amazing
professional.
how,
Yeah.
even though it feels uncomfortable, how you end up making it work and the income to cover the spread ends up being there. It's amazing. Like I spoke to a client the other day that bought last year, and she definitely felt like it was tight. And she's been waiting for rates to come down so that it wouldn't feel as tight. And rates have been holding very strong. And I spoke to her. She was asking me about MI and getting rid of it and stuff. And when we spoke, I was like, rates are we're maybe going to get there by the end of the year. Hang tight. How does everything look? She was like, no, you know what? We both got raises, which was expected. We just weren't sure by how much. And now the payment feels fine. We
Yeah.
want a lower rate, of course, because it would be great to save more. But that that's normally what happens. People get in and they end up getting a raise or they end up earning more. The business becomes more successful. Things like that naturally take place, and they naturally take place when you are in a home that you own
Mhm.
and start establishing yourself in that way, building equity and things like that. So it's an interesting, I feel like almost energetic thing that happens and can obviously help with growing your portfolio and everything like that.
Oh, absolutely. And it's really hard for people to find that balance of, okay, I'm too conservative or I'm too risky. We've got to be somewhere between the if you're the Dave Ramsey, that's awesome. If you're the Grant Cardone, okay, that's a strategy, but
Right.
there's some balance in the middle. And I think the difficulty is that's found within each of us. Each of us has a different risk tolerance. And as woo as it seems, like listening to your gut and checking, does this make sense? The decisions I'm making, bouncing it off others. That's where I really wish people would talk to mortgage brokers and realtors more aside from just when they're looking to buy the home is
Right.
we have no problem if people call us and just want to check in and see, hey, this is what I'm thinking. What do you think about this? It takes 10 minutes of our time. Maybe
Always.
we can
Yes.
completely re-verify something or say, do not do that. That is a bad decision that you're making, but here's the way that you could go about it. And again, it all comes back to time. If somebody has a 3-year plan, the amount of things you can do for them or I can do for them is dramatically different than if it's 3 or 6 months. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So then we'll wrap it up with this question that you had for me as one of the first things you asked me when we spoke beforehand about the transferring of loans between different servicers. So
Yeah.
tell me what you've been experiencing, and then I can tell you why it is actually market related and how that works and why you're seeing it a little bit more now than normal.
Yeah, so really, this whole situation started as, oh, it's normal. Mortgages get transferred, and being transferred is the being resold. So essentially, or reassigned. And essentially, in the last 14 months, that's happened 12 times. And almost every time that mortgage is transferred, or I get the letter, hey, you have a new servicer, I have to go in and reset up my payment system. I have to reset
Yeah.
up auto pay. There's not usually a notification that is very obvious that comes through on, I might get a letter saying your mortgage has been transferred, but that's it.
You absolutely should. You should get a few letters, but
And
yeah.
the other day, and just a couple days ago, I was on the call with PHH today, actually resolving it, but they sent me an email that the mortgage had been transferred and hey, a payment was past due. Luckily, it was only a couple days, but the payment was past due. There was no property address. It was the amount that was owed. There was
I
no
hate that.
phone number. There was nothing. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, how are you supposed to? And I'm in real estate. How are people that are not in real estate every day even supposed to navigate that process? It's daunting for me. And
How
it's
you call. The
yeah,
first thing to say is always, and I have to tell everybody, I answered 2 emails just today on looks like my loan was transferred. What do we do? Is it spam? Is it
yeah,
real? Like a lot of people aren't sure about that. And the main thing is call. Call the
absolutely.
customer service of the new servicer. Find out what your loan number is. Obviously, if you have multiple properties, that's a weird thing. I agree. The property address, like your address will show up, but not the property address. They just assume it's your only. But so many times I'm like, what property is this for? But you just call. You have to call customer service, unfortunately, and get on and speak with them. The most important thing to note is when a property is transferred or when a mortgage is transferred to a different servicer, you legally have 90 days to pay it without them being able to legally report a late for you. So if you miss one mortgage payment, not to fret. They actually can't report it to the bureaus for 90 days after the transfer. Within 90 days, things should get set up and be copacetic between you and the system online or the automatic payments, whatever it is, however you like to set it up and pay. But they do give you 90 days before they can actually report a mortgage late. So that's one thing to know. So there's less fear involved of, I'm going to miss my payment. I didn't get that transfer letter. I don't even know who I'm paying anymore. Like that whole thing.
Multiple calendar reminders. That's what we have to have, because that first payment, they don't allow you to always set up auto pay unless you did it right away. So then there's this other compounding effect of potential late fees, and they will charge late fees on that one because you forgot auto pay that next month. Yep, it's $94 was the pay. The payment.
I know I would fight that, but yeah, it is a process. The reason that you're seeing it a little bit more now than normal, and they're always everybody. When I worked for B of A, we would transfer loans to Bank of Mellon, New York. That was a big servicer for B of A. So even the big banks transfer loans out. And the reason is they are packaging these loans and selling them towards mortgage-backed securities, and they get payouts for them. And it's money. And a lot of companies need this money right now because they really aren't making much on the loan. And for mortgage banks like Movement that I'm with, or any kind of independent mortgage bank, so, Loan Depot, guaranteed rate, things like that, mortgage banks. For them to try to keep rates low, to be competitive, they have to sell a lot of their servicing right now. And it's because, again, we're not making much on the loan. We certainly aren't making much just keeping it and holding it at this point, because I guess the cost of any standard loan for a mortgage bank to close and originate is about $6,000 to $8,000. And that's because of everything it takes. We have to have a disclosure department, a processing department, underwriting department, a closing department, a CD department, this department. There's a lot of people to pay when it comes to funding and originating a loan. And we don't pass those fees on to the buyer. Like we pass lender fees, which are like processing and underwriting, and their standard fees. They're around $1,600 to $1,700.
Yeah.
But we don't pass on the massive amount of fees that it takes to actually originate a loan. And that is about $6,000 to $8,000. So if we keep the loan after we fund it, there's a long time for us to recoup that money back. And if we're not getting it on the rate, then how are we keeping the doors open is really the question, right? And so if you sell it to a servicer, you're earning a bunch of money back. First off, you're earning any money that you've lost just to originate it. But not just that, you're earning enough money to then offer more aggressive rates to your clients.
And now I remember there was something, I was hoping you could explain this on, because it was backwards of how I had thought about it, on when that loan is being resold or transferred. Is it the lower interest rate loan is more attractive because they're actually going to probably hold that for the term of the loan? Or is the higher interest rate loan more attractive because, hey, they're paying more interest, it's more attractive, but they're probably not going to keep that rate because they're going to refinance? What's the relationship there?
Totally depends. Right now, every loan that's been funded in the past 2.5 years is temporary, because anything in the sixes is going to get, whether it's 6.1 or 6.9, that isn't going to change the offer rate on a mortgage-backed security. It's like nothing.
Yeah.
Now, my non-QM investors, of course, that's through a separate proprietary bank, and sometimes those rates are in the high 7s, 8s, even low 9s in some cases.
Yeah.
If the credit isn't good and it's a low down payment. But As far as most loans have been chilling in the sixes now for a while. Really, like that's where it is. Sometimes we get into the mid sixes. Occasionally, like once a year, we see a low six, but basically we're in the mid sixes, mid to high. That mortgage, that's going to sell in the same kind of way based on the fact that all loans are temporary right now until they come down, because every single one, regardless of it being 6.1 or 6.9, when rates go into the fives, are going to sell out and close. So it's just an interesting, and that's why when it comes to conventional loans, mortgages through Fannie and Freddie, government agencies, that's why you don't see the government agencies offering ARMs. So I get asked all the time, what are your ARMs? What are your adjustable rate mortgages? But any kind of loan that you're going to sell on the open market, that's an ARM, there's no one buying that ARM for less money. Like what? There's no incentive to sell a more temporary loan when every single loan is temporary to begin with. So like, why would an investor want to buy an interest rate that they're making even less money on for whatever it is, 5 years, 7 years, who cares how many years, when most are going to sell anyway within a year or two. So there just isn't a market for ARMs right now, unless you go with a proprietary bank, and a proprietary bank will offer an ARM because they keep it. Proprietary means that they're keeping the mortgage themselves. They don't have to go off government agencies. They do their own regulation, whatever. And it's all their own warehouse funds and everything like that. So for them, they can offer an ARM, like a US bank offers a pretty good ARM. But that's because that's their ARM and they're keeping it and it doesn't matter to them.
Going to hold it.
They're going to hold it. They're going to do the refinance.
That makes sense.
When the rate goes down, it's because
there's so many rabbit holes we could go down on the refi, and the strategy of investors knowing, hey, we're going to make money on the refinance, but we want to be closer to the time horizon of when those refinances are going to be taking place. So then it's an interesting perspective of products we get to see. If you do it more than I'd say 8 to 10 years, you start to see that market change, and it's really, it's fascinating.
It is. And there's really no way to understand what the future looks like, honestly. And so you just work off the present and deal with what's in front of you. I had 100 different ARM products in 2021. Obviously, we were selling like 1.8, 1.9 on an ARM. But that was so silly. Now, whenever I have somebody whose ARM is coming up, because some of them are, right?
Yeah.
They're coming up in a year or so, I'm like, damn, you're still in that house. Like, that's unfortunate. We don't have ARMs available really for you now, and rates are in the sixes. Whereas I could have locked you on a 30-year at 2.7. But you decided to take that ARM at 1.9. So it's
comes down to the planning.
No, then that's what it is. That's real estate. That's the risk you take. You do it with every property you buy and every mortgage that you obtain. Yeah. It's lovely chatting with you, Jordan. Thank you for joining us today.
You too. I feel like we could talk for a lot longer. We touched the surface.
I know.
I appreciate you having me.
We got like to this much of the notes that I have for you. But it's a good start for sure.
And even less through the history of real estate. We've got about 2,300 years left to talk about. So
I know. And of course, I'm really interested in that. Like, I would love to talk more about that. I was like, I got to get off this history of real estate thing and talk about something else. But yes, thank you. It was such a pleasure. Appreciate you sharing with us your wealth of knowledge. And I look forward to maybe speaking with you again sometime.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure speaking with you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thanks for joining us.
I'll see you later.
On Movement Mortgage on My Mind.
Thanks for listening to Mortgage on My Mind. If you're ready to start your mortgage journey or have any questions, I'd love to help. With 20 years of experience, I make the process as simple and stress-free as possible. Check the show notes for my contact info, and don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast. Until next time, I'm Natalie Salins, here to help make your real estate dreams a reality.